Hey guys, Josh from SoccerReviewsForYou.com bringing you my playtest video of the Laceless Adidas A16 Plus Pure Control. Now, like all my other playtest videos, you guys are going to get a ton of footage of me using the shoes, kind of playing around with the ball, just for entertainment's sake, of course. And we're also going to break down all the important details that you need to know about this shoe. There's some good things, there's some not so good things, and there's a lot of little quirks with this Laceless boot from Adidas that you really should know if you were at all considering them. So if you want to learn more, please stick around and watch the entire video. And with that being said, let's get right into the playtest. Alright, so what is it like to wear the A16 Plus Pure Control? This is an extremely difficult shoe to actually describe in terms of what the experience is like. They're completely different than anything else that I've ever worn, different from previous Laceless models that I've worn. And what's kind of confusing about this shoe is that there's some aspects of it that I really like, but there's other aspects that I think are just flawed to the point where this is not one of those shoes that I probably would ever wear again, and I'm going to explain those reasons throughout this video. So I'm going to talk a lot. I apologize for that. There's going to be some footage of me actually using the shoe, slow-mo footage as I'm talking, so kind of look forward to that if you just don't want to hear me talk. But if you truly are interested in picking these up as your next pair of shoes, please listen to everything that I have to say, because you will find this information extremely valuable in terms of how it may influence your buying decision. So to start things off, I want to talk about the way these things fit. And there's several aspects to the fit that are good as well as bad. Now, you guys have probably seen my video, the Things You Should Know video. If you haven't, I'll leave an annotation on screen. That goes over a lot of aspects on how these things actually fit and feel on feet. Just a couple quick points. These do run true to size. I wear my usual size 9 US for review, and the fit and length was absolutely perfect, and really, really, really recommended if you do plan on picking these up, you get them to fit absolutely perfect. You do not want any extra space on the inside of the shoe. If you leave any extra growing room at all, you're going to have a lot of issues. They're not going to fit properly. They're not going to be responsive, and it's just going to be a nightmare shoe. Once you do get the proper fit, which I was able to get going true to size, it's one of those shoes that doesn't feel like anything else out there, so I can't really compare it to other shoes. What's interesting about the Laceless concept is it changes up where the tightness is on your foot, which is kind of unusual at first, but something that you actually get used to pretty quickly. And to a certain point, I guess is the best way to put it, I actually found these things quite comfortable. It wasn't until later on, kind of through more thorough testing, that I ran into some really big issues that I'm going to be pointing out in just a second. So in terms of how these things fit, it's a tighter fit through the midfoot, a very tight fit in the heel, and then it's a little bit wider, more spacious in the forefoot and toe box area. But for the most part, it's a tighter fitting shoe should you get the proper fit. Now with a laced up shoe, normally you have support systems on the side that are brought together by laces in the middle, or they can be off-centered, it really doesn't matter, but the laces hold everything there. They push your foot into the bottom of the shoe, and like I said, hold everything in place. With a laceless concept, you don't have that, and what's kind of interesting about this shoe, especially in comparison to the Lotto Zero Gravity shoes, is this knitted upper that they have running through the middle. This part is elasticated. There's two layers, an outside layer and an internal one, where this does have the ability to stretch. So in comparison to those Lotto Zero Gravity boots of the past, these are much easier to get on, much easier to take off because of this center part having that stretchability to it. But there are some downsides to this top part being stretchy as well, which I'll get to in just a second. So as far as putting these on for the first time, it's a little bit difficult. You may struggle, but once they're on, they feel okay. There's definitely a lot of stiffness down the sides. That's where really the shoe's going to be squeezing your foot, whereas across the top, it feels pretty loose. There's really no pressure or any kind of tightness there. So that's kind of unusual in comparison to pretty much any other soccer shoe that I've worn. And then you don't really have that much tightness in the forefoot area, but it is well reinforced. And then there's a lot of tightness in the heel. Again, because you don't have any laces, there's no adjustability to this. There has to be a very aggressive, very kind of, I don't want to say narrow, but very tight fit in the heel, because it has to grab it and hold it in place without any kind of extra reinforcement or any kind of lockdown mechanism, I guess. So what you're going to notice with this shoe from brand new and even after break-in time is there's a lot of extra pressure on your heel, and depending on how they fit you, the fit in the heel could be absolutely terrible. It might be absolutely perfect. And that's really a huge recommendation that I have about this shoe. If you try these on either in store or if you order them online and they show up at your house, try them on. If you don't like how they feel, return them, don't buy them. It's not going to get any better. There's no adjustability with this laceless system, and that is really the major flaw with any laceless shoe. It's not made for everybody, so if you put them on and they don't feel right, they're never going to feel right, regardless of breaking them in, regardless of how much you wear them. It's just not something that is ever going to get better. So if you put these on and they feel good and you want to give them a go for it. But if you put them on and they feel bad, they're only going to get worse. So like I said, the pressure in the heel is something that I found to be a little bit uncomfortable. It's not something that really ever went away. And it's just because you don't have a perfectly secure lockdown. And unless you have a perfectly shaped heel for this particular shoe, which is very, very unlikely, every time you bend your foot, your heel is going to want to come up. And because you have this extra pressure holding it down, there's just that element of discomfort. Should you wear them long enough, and kind of endure pain long enough, you will get blisters, no doubt about that whatsoever. But I really found that over a full 2-hour playing session, whether it was Freekicks, practice, a game, whatever it was, it's a shoe that I really was happy to take off my feet after 2 hours. I just didn't find them to be terribly comfortable throughout an entire 2-hour playing session. So in regards to the fit, like I said, very tight in the heel. But the overall shape, if they fit you properly, is not bad. It's a fairly comfortable shoe once you get used to them. But the comfort is really dependent on what you're actually doing in the shoes, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So in regards to how the comfort is, like I said, it really depends on what you're doing. The first half of my experience with this shoe prior to making this video was kind of more light sessions. I was breaking them in slowly, didn't want to suffer any kind of blisters or kind of shoe related injuries, I guess, which is how you should break in shoes. You want to take your time with them. So during that process, aside from just slight discomfort from kind of getting used to how these fit and feel, which pretty much everybody is going to go through, once I actually got used to them, it's a shoe that I found pretty comfortable. I actually came to really like how they fit and felt on feet. With that being said, once I got to more intense movements after kind of getting comfortable with these shoes, doing sprints and striking the ball, stuff like that, I found them to be very, very uncomfortable, and I'm going to explain why right now. Now, during these more kind of low intensity movements, the lack of security across the top of the foot really isn't an issue. If you're jogging, if you're passing the ball, if you're juggling, if you're doing, like I said, more kind of light work activity, you're not going to have any issues. But as soon as you start going through more intense movements and really putting stress on this upper, this top part where there aren't any laces is where you're really going to notice some issues. And again, this is not opinion. This is straight up my experience with this shoe. So I know a lot of people are of the opinion that I'm just saying negative things to say negative things. That's not the case at all. I really do my best to be completely honest with you guys in these reviews. So regardless of whether it's positive or negative, I'm going to tell you what my experience was. So what I found is across the top of the foot, because it's elasticated, you just don't have the proper lockdown. And where this really is a huge issue, at least for me personally, is when I was striking the ball. Whether this is my left foot, so this is really the main shoe that I was having an issue with. I'm a right-footed kicker, so when I would plant my left foot to strike the ball, all of the pressure is going to be forced upon the top of your foot because you plant your foot and then your momentum obviously wants to carry you forward. I'm going to be flashing some slow-mo images of me striking the ball on screen, and you can see it a little bit, but normally with a laced up shoe, the laces are kind of pushing your foot down into the base of the sole plate, holding it in place. Because you don't have that security across the top of your foot, when you plant your foot to strike the ball, this top part stretches upwards, which eliminates all the pressure holding your foot to the base of the sole. And regardless of how well they fit, and like I said, I had no extra space inside the shoe, because this top part would stretch up, my foot would actually slide forward and I'd end up jamming my toes across the front of the shoe on the inside, to the point where I actually end up getting a black toenail, which is very uncomfortable. I'm sure some of you guys, a bruised toenail is kind of the more proper term, I suppose, which is very uncomfortable, and something that I don't normally experience with shoes, but it became a major issue with the A16 Plus PURECONTROL. And again, that just has to do with this laceless system and it not providing the lockdown that you would want from a high-end soccer shoe, or really any soccer shoe for that matter. As far as lateral stability is concerned, the sides are reinforced extremely well. Again, I'm going to be flashing some slow-mo footage on screen, but the sides, especially this lateral side where the Adidas branding is, you have extra layers of material on top, plus the microfiber liner on the inside, plus the prime knit upper, and you have a microfiber liner on the inside on the medial side as well. But like I said, side-to-side movements, yes, there's some movement in the heel and the collar area, but it's not something that I really found to be an issue at all. It's not the most responsive shoe by any means. If you're comparing this to something like a Superfly or an Obra, it's just not as locked down at all. But for a laceless shoe with a knitted upper, and given the issues that it has when you're planting your foot in this direction, when you're planting your foot going this way, it's better than I thought it would be. So no major complaints there whatsoever. As far as other quirks with the fit go, I found myself fairly often pulling up this little pink pull tab right here, just because the underside material here, there's two layers of kind of tongue where they've eliminated the laces. The pink part on the inside would generally slide down and you'd get kind of a bunch up. So I found myself pulling these up every 5 minutes or so when I would notice that there was some kind of extra pressure across the top of my foot that I wasn't expecting. And as far as this collar is concerned, this straight cut, it looks a little bit unusual, not something that you really notice when you're wearing the shoe. It doesn't really have any impact on the fit. It's pretty much just an extension piece. Again, like I mentioned in the things you should know video, it does kind of fit loosely at the sides of your ankle. So there is that risk that somebody could come and tackle you and get their stud caught on the inside, which could kind of cling your cleats together or potentially even rip the collar. But especially using these on artificial grass, I found that if you slide at all, this picks up a lot of those rubber turf pellets and lets them fall on the inside of the shoe. So that's kind of a negative aspect of this particular collar if you are going to be using it on artificial grass, but on natural grass, it's something that likely would not be an issue for you. As far as touch is concerned, I really didn't have any issues with this shoe. I actually quite like the touch that it provides, but I will say that the looks can be deceiving in terms of how these shoes actually feel. Obviously, what you see is a knitted upper, which would lead a lot of people to believe that it's going to be similar to something like an Obra or a Superfly, but that's not the case at all. The top layer that you can see is knitted, yes, but then you have that polyurethane layer on top, which doesn't really change things, but on the inside, the entire shoe is lined in a kind of firmer microfiber material that I would almost compare to something like the Nike Hypervenom Phantom 2. So in terms of how the shoe feels on your foot from the inside, it's a very firm synthetic material, but on the outside, it does have the softness of the actual prime knit material. It's pretty flexible once it is actually broken in, fairly stiff at first. And as far as touch is actually concerned, it's not an overly thin shoe. It's not a thick shoe by any means either. But you definitely do get kind of a more pingy sensation, but a slightly dampened effect due to the actual prime knit top layer. The touch, no issues with. I actually pretty much enjoyed it. The only kind of little issue that I had, or minor complaint, I guess, and this is something you're going to find with pretty much any shoe, regardless of whether or not they're laceless. But this top part, being that it is laceless and just kind of exposed knitted material, is much more slick than the rest of the upper that does have the kind of a polyurethane coating that isn't necessarily grippy, but does provide more grip than the top part of the foot. But like I said, in regards to touch, no issues whatsoever. And just one thing to address in regards to control. I know the marketing from Adidas would suggest that eliminating the laces has some kind of a benefit in regards to controlling the ball. And the simple kind of response to that is these will not make your touch any better. These will not improve your ball control. That's a skill that's down to your own personal abilities, regardless of what shoes are on your feet. So if you're buying these with the hope that they're going to improve your touch, unfortunately, they won't do that for you. As far as traction is concerned, I didn't really have any issues with the Ace 16 Plus PureControl. Essentially, for this new Ace line, what Adidas has done is reintroduced the F50 Adizero sprint frame and stud pattern with some minor tweaks to it. So the sprint frame, being the sole plate that does have the one-piece heel counter as well, is much lighter than what we've seen from the previous Ace line, which makes these a lot lighter. So this particular shoe in a 9 US weighs in at 8 ounces, which is relatively light given how this shoe looks, although I will argue that they feel pretty substantial on your feet. If you're looking for that ultra lightweight feel, these don't provide that. But with that being said, the actual sprint frame is flexible enough. And like I said, feels pretty good on this shoe, really no issues with it. As far as the stud pattern is concerned, this is their Ground Control 2.0 stud pattern, which essentially is, again, exactly what we got from previous F50 Adizero models, but instead of the studs being triangle in shape, they're now perfectly rounded all the way through with, like I said, the exact same layout. So you get your stiffener bars through the middle. You've got all conical studs in the forefoot and the heel. They market this as an FG AG stud pattern, and my testing for this shoe was exclusively on artificial grass. Is this the best AG stud pattern? No, it definitely does feel more like a firm ground stud pattern. For use on artificial grass, I found the studs to be a little bit longer than I might like, but clinginess wasn't really an issue and stability wasn't really an issue either. I just wish the studs were a little bit shorter for use on artificial grass, but for use on firm ground, they'll be absolutely fine. If you've used an Adidas model in the last couple of years, you've probably used a variation of this stud pattern. It's proven and works well. One other thing to mention in regards to the sole plate is the actual paint on the bottom. It comes with a tag or a sticker that basically tells you that the paint will wear off. This anodized green look will wear off over time with use, but obviously isn't going to affect the performance. Based on my experience, other than just little kind of wear around the studs, the paint has kind of remained intact pretty well. I'll give you guys some close-up images that'll flash on screen just to give you guys an idea. But for the most part, the color hasn't changed all that much, but of course it will get worse and worse the more that you use them. So again, in regards to traction, no issues at all. They grip pretty well on artificial grass. Is it the best AG stud pattern that I've worn? Absolutely not, but it definitely is usable on both natural and artificial grass playing surfaces if that's something that you kind of need in a soccer shoe if you only want to buy one pair as opposed to two. All right, guys, that is it for my review of the Adidas A16 Plus Pure Control. Hopefully you found it helpful and informative. If you did, be sure to support the video with a like. And of course, if you have any other questions that perhaps weren't answered in the video or just want clarification, leave those questions down below in the comment section and I definitely will get an answer out to you. This is a shoe to sum things up. It's a shoe that I really liked at first once I started to get used to it, but then some of the fatal flaws came into play. And for me personally, this is not a pair of shoes that I would pick as my pair of shoes for the season, if you will. And if you are still planning on picking these up, just be very, very careful about how they fit you from out of the box. If they don't feel right from brand new, don't go through with it. Return them, guys, because like I said, the lack of adjustability plays a huge role in how these will feel for you in the long run. If they don't feel good, they're never going to feel good. If they do feel good, you can definitely go ahead and give them a chance. Again, given the things that I told you in this video, you should definitely keep all of that in consideration. So that's pretty much it. If you guys are interested in a pair of these for yourself, be sure to check out the review page on my website. That'll be the very first link down below in the description of this video. On that page, you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes where you'll be able to pick these guys up below their normal $300 retail price. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all my social media information linked in the description as well. And other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video. And as always, thanks for watching.